getting ready to be shipped overseas, and getting some winter clothes issued to us. So we just all standing around. Nobody was doing anything. Just hurry up and wait, as the Army says. So we just decided that we'd walk across the street and get us a chocolate malt. So we did. We walked across the street, and there was a malt place there, and we got us a malt. Pretty soon we came back, and the old boy in charge said, "You two have just been AWOL. Absent without leave." I said,
AWOL.
"Yeah, AWOL." I said, "What are you going to do about it?" "I haven't figured it out yet." I said, "Well, why don't you just put us in the brig and we won't have to be shipped overseas?" He said, "Now just don't get smart with me, because you're going to be loading on that ship pretty quick." And we did. Oh boy. Yeah.
You see, that's what that rapper in travel, he got really deathly ill going over.
Yeah, boy, I did.
Was it because of the malt?
No.
That's a penalty for assassin back the guy, I'm sure. Yeah, that was his malt and assassin back the guy, so he got to pay back. That's Susan.
Down in Texas there, at Camp Fannin, they took us to a movie that's going to give us a training film at this movie house. So Marvin and I, every time, I was in the first barracks and he was in the second. And every time we go someplace like that, we'd always get together. So we were standing over there talking to each other, which we thought was just bare ground. And this old sergeant come over and he says, "You two soldiers get off the grass." And we just kept standing there and we just kept talking. So he come over there, got a little louder and said, "I told you two soldiers to get off the grass." And we said, "Where is the grass? Didn't you read that sign?" And then it said they had just sowed grass seed. Oh boy, something else.
Always causing trouble.
Yeah, they used to think we were twins.
I'm surprised he ever came home.
They used to ask Marvin and I, "Are you two twins?" "No, we're just friends." But I am a little surprised, which I explained to him. I said, "I was just going to tell Shannon how we went, how quick we got inducted, where we took our training." And I said, it's just so that eventually our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren can know what we did to cause this, or have this freedom. "Well, I've been talking it over with Carol, and I don't think I'm going to do it." I said, "Well, that's just fine."
And even we were over with Mike, and we did go to Dhaka back there.
Mm-hmm.
The barracks had all been rebuilt where the prisoners were held, but the gas chamber was different. And so we did see that at the Dhaka.
Like a slaughterhouse. Had hooks and tracks.
The ovens were still
Yeah.
there. The gas jets down in the hole.
Where they gassed
So it
them.
really did exist, and it did happen, and a lot of them don't want to ever think that it could have ever happened, but it did. And other than slave labor from the Americans, they were put in the gas chambers. This is Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And persecuted in that.
It's getting rid of the Jews. Because I watched on the History Channel the other night, and when Hitler knew he was ill, and he knew he couldn't hold on to his job anymore, he made a Navy man, I forget, they told the name. He gave it to the Navy man as the next Fuhrer, and he wrote his obituary. Hitler wrote his obituary, And then this is where it told this next Fuhrer to keep killing the Jews. Keep killing the Jews. Of course, that after he died, killed himself. I was always hoping we could capture him. But he didn't want to be captured because he knew what they'd do, put him on display, you know. So. But the Russians got in to Berlin. We were on our way to Berlin too. I forgot time. I can't remember everything, but I remember they held us up and we wondered why in the world here we are in this position. And we've been here for days. What are they doing? And later it came down that we're letting the Russians get into Berlin first. I was kind of happy about that. I didn't want to go to Berlin.
So did you run into any of the other allies? Or was it just mainly your American
Oh,
group that you were with?
well, not in wartime, but in occupation, I would run into some Russians. We'd see Russians in Kassel, Germany. And then I never did it, but while we were in combat, sometimes we'd meet the English. I never did, but I was told that some of our units met them. Montgomery, he was one of the big generals.
But you yourself just fought with your own.
Yeah, I just fought with my own, yeah. I think I mentioned that a while ago that General Eisenhower said if we could save the Remagen Bridge, shorten the war about 6 months, and save tens of thousands of men.
It's the first inroad into Germany, though. The first foothold that you guys really got.
Yeah.
Was because of the Remagen Bridge.
Yeah, that's right.
That gave you a real good
That gave
invasion
us
on
a
into
foothold on into Germany. The Germans tried to blow the bridge up, but it went up and settled right back down on the same pillars. And they had, some of the shells were landing in the water, like I wrote here to my parents. I walked across this bridge. I should have said run, but I said I walked across this bridge while we're throwing 88s and mortars. We could hear and see the shells land in the water. And I saw my first, and I should have said American, but I said I saw my first dead Yanks here. We were called Yanks. But, and I talked to Warren Schilling there once, and he agreed. There were so many dead Americans, Shannon, that you had to step over them and be careful that you didn't step on one.
the Germans finally did get the bridge to collapse.
Yeah, they did.
They kept bombing it, and they finally did.
I forgot to tell you that. It fell in, and after we crossed it, so we must have crossed around the 10th or 11th of March.
You were the first?
We were the first, you want to write that down. We were the first full infantry division to cross the bridge. First full infantry division, the 99th. We were called Battle Babies. We were called Checkerboard.
And that's why the Remagen Bridge was so important.
Yeah.
They'd blown up all the other bridges that
Across the Rhine.
and they had left the Remagen Bridge.
And you said that was about March 10th or 11th?
Yeah, one of those.
45?
I think Mike said we crossed on the 10th.
But that was of 1945?
Right, 1945. And it had great big holes. And when I talked to Warren Schilling, he asked me, did you do anything special when you got up on that bridge? And I said, no, not really. What did you do? And he said he untied his boots and he unsnapped his pack so that if he fell through the bridge, that he could get those things off and swim. I said, I just told my men, don't look for me. I'll die of fright before I hit the water. 50 feet down to the water, that we learned later. But the next morning, by the way, the bridge fell in. And the next morning, the engineers had a pontoon bridge and they were bringing tanks and trucks and everything up across that river.
The Americans?
The Americans, yeah. And how I got to give those engineers credit for they could build that bridge and nothing flat. So like I say, it takes everybody.
From Rotary, the riveter back here, making all this
That's
stuff.
right. All
Everybody else.
Yeah, it took everybody.
Certainly did, and the country really pulled together.
Oh, they did.
Did without a lot of things. There was gasoline rations, shoe rations,
Yeah.
meat rations, sugar rations.
So we talked about all that in American history.
Yeah. There was no new cars being made. They never made. Everything was military.
Everybody gathered up every bit of scrap metal that they had laying around. And in grade school, we went out and picked, of course, we picked the milkweed pod because that was put in life vest back then.
Yeah.
And so that was a part that, as young children in school, that we could do in the country. We would go out walking at recess time or at noon time and gather the milkweed pods. And that was part of our thing to help with the war.
So were you nursing at that time? No.
Well, girls.
I was just making sure. I didn't think that you were. You little baby grandma.
40 and 31, this all happened in 44, 45.
Yeah, when I
was
first
a young girl.
they bombed Pearl Harbor, I remember listening to that on a
She
Sunday.
died from Raffles. He was 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
13. Raffles wouldn't have looked at me.
I wouldn't have looked at her.
Hot-nosed girl.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're doing okay.
It really pulled the country together, and everybody was truly American, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was really good. And everybody did their share, no matter what it was, because everybody had to sacrifice. And it all came out of the Depression, so they'd already sacrificed a lot during the Depression years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
right into the war years.
Yeah.
They had always hoped that that would be the last one, but
Look how many more we've had since.
well, we've been in conflict. I can't say we can say war because they
Well.
never declared it as war. It's always
No,
conflict.
it's
And it hasn't been
it's a
on a
conflict.
major scale either.
Yeah.
I'm sure down the line it will be again. But, yeah. But you have to stop and think. Europe was not the involvement that got us in the war. Japanese bombed us
Yeah.
at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that started the bloodshed. All of these things had been going on in Europe. We had heard about them, people had, but we didn't get involved in settling what was going on.
That's right. I remember at school they were
So
talking
we
about.
took it on two different fronts, but we got involved over there, but they had not hit us. They tried. We had submarines just outside, in the ocean, close to our land. But the Japanese is what started.
That's
World
what
War
started
II.
the whole thing.
That's what got us involved.
And one of the Japanese, after they said, one of the big shots said, I think we had just awakened a sleeping giant.
But the Japanese are the ones that started World War II.
Yeah. Yeah. when
You had said you went from, I think it was Castle, and you were going to Japan. Is that right?
Yeah.
When,
Now,
when did you get over there, and what did you do
oh,
there?
I didn't get to Japan.
You didn't.
No.
They dropped the
They dropped the
Okay.
bomb, the hydrogen bomb.
He had gotten to England, I think.
As far as I got was England.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
But I was on my way to Japan.
So you were traveling the other way, not?
He was at England, and that's when they sent him back for occupation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in England
Yeah.
first, and they were going to be shipped out to Japan.
Yeah. We was going to the, I guess, the California and be shipped over there.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we were,
Yeah. And get that war over there and then.
and that's
I
when
don't-
President Truman dropped the 2 atom bombs.
Yeah.
That's that over there.
The story goes that,
And they had already won in Europe.
yeah, that was over.
They had already taken it.
But I always heard stories about Truman.
But,
Calling.
yeah, as you know, our military landed in France. They landed, and then we were in Belgium, we were in Italy. I mean, we freed all those countries because they were being occupied.
Yeah, we did.
Africa, Uncle Henry, my brother-in-law, landed and crossed Africa to get into Germany.
Desert Fox, is that something? Is that it? Desert something, I remember.
Yeah, I was going to say, who was it, Rommel?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was
yeah.
the Desert Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was.
But Uncle Henry, he waded across Africa. He knew about all that sand.
Yeah.
Because, but to get into Germany, that's how
Yeah.
they crossed down to Africa first.
Mm-hmm.
So he said all of these countries, but they didn't, the French didn't like us when we were liberated. They're not friends. No, they never have. Even, we should have just left them. I'm sorry.
Let
But I
them
mean,
speak
you know,
German. Let them
Let
speak
them
German.
speak German. It would have served
Yeah.
them right because of
Yeah.
And I said the German people were not all bad people. They were doing their things as they were told to do, and they were nice people as well. And a
Yeah.
lot of them did help us.
A lot of them helped.
And a lot of those countries, some people helped, or we wouldn't have managed to accomplish what they did.
Was your unit ever helped by just like German citizens or what?
No. After the war was over, I never really got acquainted with
At
it.
least not that he knows directly.
Yeah, right. I know I've heard stories that some of the German civilians helped the American soldiers,
Or helped hide them?
help hide them, and stuff like that, give them food and stuff.
We did a lot of our parachute guys that
Yeah,
had to go in behind the lines.
yeah.
And
I never,
those are,
I was
the
always,
heroes are the ones who are still over there.
oh yeah,
And they're buried. And those cemeteries are so impressive.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. We went to where Patton is, but I can't think of the cemetery.
I don't either.
But that was so impressive to walk in there.
Is that like Michael River that you went?
That road after road after road of like it was just, but those that, and that's only one of the ones that are around there, but we did see that one, and I said, was that in Belgium?
Yeah.
Germany?
Yeah,
Or
Belgium.
And we went on down the road at a short piece, and that's when we stopped at the German place where they buried Ram. And I mean, it was just such a contrast to the ones, but we did visit those pictures of those.
Oh, another question. Where all were you wounded? Were you wounded other besides that powder burn?
Oh, I got some metal in my ankle.
Yeah, you got burnt at the same time that you got this rat.
Yeah, same
Was
time.
that about the only time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there was, right at the end of the war, towards the end of the war, the Germans were running out of ammunition, and they fired shrapnel. No, they fired ack-ack. Ack-ack is metal they fire at airplanes against the Geneva war thing. But they fired it at the infantry.
But no, Grandpa was one of them.
Yeah. And that stuff was hitting my steel helmet and hitting my back.
Grandpa was lucky. He had one small piece of shrapnel.
And the medic pulled that out with his tweezers.
For some reason or other, the good Lord had Grandpa come back.
Yeah, that's right.
To carry on. But he is one of the very fortunate. Other than a lot of frostbite.
Yeah. Well, the medics didn't have weapons, did they?
No.
Okay.
No. They were not supposed to be fired on because they had the big red cross on their helmets, but a lot of them were killed.
See, I think that would be tough.
Yeah, they didn't carry weapons.
Kind of like the flag carrier.
Yeah.
Not having any way to protect yourself.
We had a medic that went out to help a wounded one, and he got the wounded back, and he said, I don't think there's any law that I can't tell you that there's a machine gun nest over there. And so everybody got it, you know. But what you said a while ago.
One of Grandpa's medics was Paul Bennett.
Yeah.
And he always told about your grandpa because he was always saying everything he passed out, whether it was aspirin or kale pectate for diarrhea or whatever, Grandpa, anybody need, he always needed. He never refused a thing they were passing.
Take it while it's coming.
I didn't.
And tell her where you kept your toilet paper.
Well, I think I did a while ago. No, I didn't tell her where I kept it. I told her what ration we got in it.
Tell her where you kept it.
You kept your toilet paper in your helmet. You always had there's a helmet liner, and then there's a band inside the helmet liner, and you always had that full of toilet paper.
Much as you could get.
Much as you could
Nice little
step
cushion.
up there, and the toilet paper was OD, olive drab, wasn't white. And but what I was going to say, what you said a while ago, and Marvin looks at it different than I do, and that's his privilege. But he just says, I don't want to say anything because the heroes are still over there.
Those are the ones that paid the ultimate price, of course.
Yeah. And all I said was,
Everybody else is.
I'm just telling this story so that the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren might want to read about what their great-grandpa done in World War II. Don't you think that's right? And that's okay if he don't want to do it. That's his privilege.
This Herb Netter, who is in Malcolm's company, and we've become friends with them. He and this Billy Harriman, who picked us up at the airport, were prisoners together.
Yeah.
And were taken at the very beginning.
On the 16th, that he said.
And as he always kidded, and he said he and Billy Harriman were like two spoons in a drawer. That's how they slept. It was so cold, and to keep warm. He said that's exactly how they managed to survive.
That's right.
Now, did they go over? They went over before you did.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they were there at the very beginning.
At the very
And then
beginning.
Grandpa went in as replacement as they got wounded or was prisoners.
Yeah.
But they had to go out and saw wood. No idea how to do it. But that was their job, was to go and saw wood. They were always being blamed for not knowing how to cut a tree down, or it wouldn't
All right.
it wouldn't fall the way it was supposed to, and all that. But that was their job, was to cut the wood for the Germans to keep going. And the first thing when they were taken prisoners, they did have boots, but they took their boots from them. Took any of their warm clothing.
Took their gloves, too.
But it's interesting to hear them tell. I don't think they were beaten or anything.
No,
they were just slave labor.
They were just labor.
And didn't have hardly anything to eat.
Yeah. But Blackie is the one that I like to listen. His stories, and he's deceased now, but he was a medic, so they treated him pretty good because he had supplies in his bag and everything that they could use. But he told about food, and that if they could have a potato about that big around, you got one. But if they had little ones, they'd give you two. And then they would peel them, and it was the winter time, of course, and so they'd peel them and put horse manure over the top of them, keep them from freezing.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, when they was getting really low on food, they would take that potato peeling and out from underneath the horse manure, and they'd make potato soup. And he said it tasted just like horse manure smelled.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and then he said, you remember seeing picture shows of where there'd be a crumb or two on the floor and everybody'd die for it? He said, that's the truth. They would. They would fight over a crumb on the floor. Everybody was so hungry.
Herb and Billy, they were always kidding, and Billy Harriman, the only thing he knew how to do was make potato chips. That was his specialty. Well, it came from when he was a prisoner and potatoes came in. He stuffed his pants full of potatoes and smuggled them back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only way they had to cook them was against the stovepipe that they kept warm. And so they'd slice them and stick them up there, and they made their potato chips from
That stovepipe.
So that was Billy's specialty, and the only thing he ever learned to cook was potato chips.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of, they throw a little humor in as well as
Oh, yeah.
saying it's the
They
real-
sure do.
the real stuff. That's how they manage. Billy Harriman cannot remember being the prisoner, but Herb Netter can. But Billy has learned to deal with it, just block it completely out of his mind.
Yeah.
And so that's how he dealt with it. And to come home to have any sort of life whatsoever. We do know a few about people that
Yeah.
did heroic things.
Yeah, this Johnny, he was, well, heck, he told a story about a guy, I can't remember exactly, but anyway, he was a prisoner, and it was marching him somewhere, and he went to the German guard and said he wanted water. He was so thirsty. And so the guy stopped the whole column and let him go up across the field where there was a house, and he saw this guy out there, German man. And he went up and got his drink, and this German had a loaf of bread about that long. So he grabbed that loaf of bread. He was going to go back, and he stuck it under his coat, and going to give his buddies a piece of bread. And he said we started marching again, and all of a sudden, this German come running down through the field, hollering, I guess he hollered stop or something, And they finally stopped, and this German went over there and talked to this guy and took that loaf of bread back, and they come to find out that he had just stuffed that bread full of rat poisoning. And if he'd have not said something, they'd have poisoned everybody that ate that bread. So he thanked that German for taking the bread back. Oh, so many stories, Shannon, that you can't believe. Some of them. But anyway, I don't think I'll ask Marvin anymore because he don't want to do that. That's okay. He said, well, he lost his brother, and that might be one reason. His brother got shot over there, killed. He was a tanker.
Mm-hmm.
And
He just had told you he wished his kids were interested.
what?
He just had told you not too long ago that he wished his children were interested.
I know it.
So that's why I thought
That's
he
why-
might be interested in how.
That's why I suggested this.
So other than like standing in a creek, because you didn't have a mine detector, did you have any other things with
Well,
mine
they later had mine detectors, but that particular time we didn't have any with us at all. And so they had to bring us back through the creek because they don't lay mines in the water. And, so
That was a safer.
that's a safe route to get back into Elsinore.
Mm-hmm.
The house in Elsinborn was still there when Mike and us were there. Looked
Yeah.
just like it did in the picture.
Just like that.
The house
in
was
there.
still
Yeah.
The pillboxes, I think we told you we located the pillbox. And according to the book, was out so far from this one area, and we found the pillbox. We've got a picture of it. But it was out. We walked across the manure spread field.
Yes,
Found
we did.
There was the pillbox that Grandpa had been ordered to go blow up, and then canceled that order.
Mm-hmm.
The dragon's
See,
teeth.
when you go through the book, the front of Elsinore, and I was there from then on. Here, but here, from the beginning here, I was never in this.
You were home.
No, I was in training, I guess, maybe at that time. But from Elsinore on, here, this building was still there when we went back.
So did you go because, I mean, not only because you couldn't get a job, but because Bob went too?
No.
Or was it just because of the job?
I just went because I knew I was going to be drafted, which I was drafted.
Yeah.
I was drafted. Now, Bob volunteered.
His number had already come up, Shannon.
Yeah, my number.
They did have a draft number, and his number came up.
My number came up, yeah.
So he knew he was going to have to go.
And
Yeah.
they did it by birthdays, didn't they? Or?
Oh, I don't remember that. I know I had a birthday in May. I went in August.
I don't know how it could have been changed.
Yeah.
I don't remember how the draft,
I don't
how they went
really.
on that.
Because in my American history class, we were talking about World War II and the draft and everything. And I don't know if that's exactly how they did it, but we had a mock draft.
Oh.
And to see which one of us would have been home, which of us would have gone, and she did it by birthday. So I didn't know if that's how they really did it or
It could
not.
have been. I'm sure it was. I'm sure at 18, everybody had,
Yeah.
by then. And
this
then
is-
how it was chosen of who would go first, I mean, I don't know after that,
Mhm.
how they...
That's our general, Walter E. Lauer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this picture somewhere. I remember him.
Can't tell by the back of your head, though.
I'm way back. Yeah, it might be one of them. I don't know. But anyway, I remember him because they made him a big platform to get on.
Mhm.
He had shiny boots and shiny leggings, and he was just like he came out of a. Well, anyway, it was just clean as could be, and all of us. We weren't too bad. He always wanted everybody to keep shaved.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't I guess I did, but I can't remember shaving too many times.
You were just a young pup, you probably didn't.
Yeah, and this is me.
Says the kid over here.
Yeah, here I am, walking up. That's where I was telling you about on the Cologne plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was in France, right? Or was that in Germany?
That's Germany.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Grandpa
good.
wasn't in France.
No, I wasn't in France.
Okay.
Other than, I guess you landed at La Havre, France.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was the
And then
only-
went to
and then-
Belgium.
And I went to, and this is on the Cologne plains where we're riding tanks, see,
Mm-hmm.
up there.
But Grandpa didn't fight in France.
Oh, no. This is that ravine that we got into. That's where I dug another pothole.
So, how did they take pictures of all this? Did somebody walk around with
Somebody
a camera?
was-
Or?
somebody- had a-
Photographer, and he's the one that gave him the name of the,
Yeah,
each
Unit?
group anymore, you had one
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
that went with that group of,
Yeah.
like the 99th, they would have had one reporter.
Yeah.
there's the Lindendorf Bridge, see? That's the bridge we
And
crossed.
he's the one that took the pictures
This-
and wrote.
We came in
about
from
that.
this side. They called it the Ludendorff Bridge, but it's at remodeling. But we came in from this side. It was up in here, and that's where I was telling those guys, that, take a look over to your left. We're going to cross that bridge. And then we had to go down through there. And then when we got across, we went way up on this high hill.
Mhm.
And that's where I dug in. And
That's where
That's
they
where-
had everybody pinned down from up there too.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
remember Bert Berta you talking about.
Oh, yeah.
that.
And Bert,
Because as you went across, there was a big hill on the other side,
Yeah.
and you all had to try to find a way to get up there.
that's right. He said after he got up there was a house and a barn or something. Well, it was dark when I got there. I didn't think there was anything up there.
Well, might not have been by the time you got there.
Well, that could have been. That could have been.
Oh, Saturday when you stopped in at work, you told me a story where you had to lay down and what didn't you like play dead and the two Germans either ran out of ammo or just left?
Yeah, that was when I went for that those K rations. Yeah, I was telling you that. Yeah.
Yeah, when he and the other guy, they didn't know whatever happened to the other two.
No, never did
The
know.
other one.
That's right.
And that's what delayed them. They got in that skirmish, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what delayed them getting back, and that's when the password changed.
Yeah.
Password
And they were
changed.
challenged.
Some of those, I never did it, but some of them guys now these are the guys that was in my squad. These three guys here,
Mhm.
and this guy's gone already, and this guy's name was Dietz, and this was Jones. And this, yeah, this is in the rear pocket. See how the Germans were giving up? Look how many
Mm.
came in.
Yeah.
We had to take care of. I said,
So
"That's it."
when the Germans surrendered to you, like, I know that they kind of stayed there for a little bit, but what happened to them after that?
You know, I really don't know. But they were,
You didn't just say, okay,
their
go back
weapons
home,
were,
did ya?
all their weapons
I'm
were
sure
taken.
some others picked them up and
Yeah,
took them and took them to a prison.
Yeah,
Okay.
they had to do that.
Oh, yeah. If you're on the front line, you take them, but then somebody else.
Somebody,
Okay.
you take
Because
them
I
back.
didn't know if you had
Yeah,
any
you hand
involvement
them
in
off
that
to
or not.
somebody else,
No,
and
we
then
take them, I'd capture them and then we'd send them back what we call the rear echelon. Somebody will take care of them and take them back to a prison.
But that just wasn't your job.
That wasn't my job.
No, he was closer to the front. You know how it is, pass the buck, pass them on back, and
Yeah.
somebody, hopefully they get where they
And this is where we walked across
So were you
here.
mostly on like the front line, or
Yeah.
were you always a little behind everybody else?
No, I was on the front line, right up where the thing was going.
Okay.
Sometimes I was in the 393rd Regiment, and like crossing the bridge there, I think that the 394th crossed in the eve at night, but the 393rd, we crossed in the daytime. And these guys were up in my platoon.
394th is the one that took it. Didn't they take the bridge?
No, no, the 9th Armored took the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, the 9th Armored took the bridge.
So did you do like more things at night, or did you just lay low at night?
Well, yeah, we fought at night, because they always taught us when we'd go into a forest area,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd look out through there, you count how many bushes, how many trees are out there. If you count 6 trees out there, 6 little bushes, we'll say. And then when you relieve the guy that's on guard duty, and you go out there, and he'll tell you, count 6. You go out there, and there's 7. There's something wrong.
You did most of your fighting during the day, though.
During the
They
daytime.
did not have the night fighting
No,
Like they do
no,
now?
no, we
like they
didn't.
can now.
We
They
didn't.
didn't have that kind of vision.
We didn't
then.
have that.
Okay.
So, yes, they went out on patrols a lot at night, to find out where the other
Yeah,
enemy
that's right.
was, so
We
that
did.
they could take them the
next
Yeah.
day.
But
Yeah.
they did, and they did a lot of their scouting at night. But
Okay.
most of their fighting was daytime.
I've been out on
fighting.
patrols, and we'd get so close to the enemy, you could hear them talking. Boy, you sneak back out of there and go back and tell the officers what you found and where they are, and all that
With
stuff.
their night vision now, they can do so much fighting at night,
At
whereas
Yeah, but we didn't,
in
no.
at that time.
When
no.
you could hear him talking and you had to go back, did you ever like pick out bits and pieces?
I
I mean,
couldn't,
was it just like normal conversation
Well,
they were talking about?
just a normal conversation as far as I know. They were just sitting around talking. Had no idea we were anywhere near them. So we sneaked back around and would tell our officers, hey, there's such and such a place. And sometimes they'd call for artillery and something else to come in. But
Now they can zero all that in, and then you fired. If a cannon fired, it was usually either too long or too short, and then hey, we'll get
The
them in
third
the
one
middle,
will
and
get
the
you.
third one will get you.
Mm-hmm.
But now,
nowadays, the
punch
first,
it in, they got
yeah,
you.
the first
Yeah.
one gets you.
You
Yeah.
don't even have. You don't even have to see what you're doing.
Mhm.
Then they did. It was
Yeah.
more closer than combat. I'm glad they don't have to.
Boy, that's right.
Did they have any like new improvements or weapons that you got while you were over there? Or was it pretty much the same thing the whole
No,
time?
it was just all the same. We just had M1 rifles and
Did
same.
tanks improve and things like that, though?
No, the tanks never. We had Patton tanks, and that's about it. And they was against the German Tiger tanks,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes the German Tigers were better than our tanks. And then,
Did we get any new planes or anything? Bombers?
well,
or stuff?
when we crossed the Rhine,
That's what she's asking, if there's other equipment that come in.
yeah, well,
That would have
the
been
Germans were the first to have, they were the first to get the airplanes without the propellers.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked so, they didn't look right when you've seen them. But they would dive on that bridge and try to blow it up. And so that was new, but our airplanes never changed. We had P-38s. That was a good airplane, twin tails, and they could outmaneuver the German fighter. I remember laying in a foxhole one day and watching it like watching a picture show. And it's like watching a sparrow after a crow. The plane was so big and clumsy that the Germans had, but this little old P-38 was going all around him. Finally got him. I remember that. And it crashed. But no, I can't remember that we had any updated right at the last.
You were issued an M1 and that's what you had.
That's what I had. Had M1 right.
At that time it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time running across the field, chasing after the enemy, I guess, and we fell to get a good shot. When I fell, you were taught to use the rifle to break your fall, and I put the rifle butt down there and it broke. But there was another rifle laying over there, so I grabbed another one, went on. Then Harry Gaither told me the story about this lieutenant I was telling you about. And he put his shell came in and knocked his rifle to pieces. I guess he had it laying up against a tree while he was digging a hole or something. And anyway, it hit this, knocked the hand grip off and the stock off. And he went to this lieutenant and said, I need a rifle. He said, well, what do you expect me to do about it? Just find one yourself. So Harry was like I was. He picked that one up off that somebody got killed, and he just picked up that rifle and went on. And that's what we did a lot of times.
Whenever you needed a new one, you could find a newer one. Or at
Well,
least
no,
one
they
a
were
little
all
better.
alive. But the only thing is, the rifle you had it zeroed in so that you know exactly how that sight went. And I just always figured if you got somebody else's, it wouldn't be zeroed in right, you know. And sometimes we would walk through the forest and fire from the hip, and we'd have continual firing because other man was firing. That gave the other man to reload, and we kept that all the way through. I had a lieutenant come to me at the end of the war. They were getting officers out of the Air Force. They were putting them in the infantry. They had no idea what the infantry was about. This one second lieutenant come to me, and I told him we was doing this firing up through there. And he says, I just been in the Air Force and I don't know anything about the infantry. And I said, well, where were you stationed when you were in the... But the Germans love second lieutenants, and you're sure telling them who you are. He had all these decorations on up there on the front line.
So you kind of kept that hidden most of the time?
Get that, yeah. We never had our while I was there, we never had our division patch, and we never had our rank. A lot of times some guys had patches and they were told to cover them up with mud. We're going into a certain place. So,
what all were you issued when you were over?
Oh,
when they started giving you guns and everything,
okay.
like what was all the equipment that
They
you had?
issued us a pack, and we had a blanket, and we was issued our long underwear, and it came in two pieces. We had the bottoms and the top, and we had the OD pants and the OD shirt.
No, what is OD stand for?
That's olive drab.
Okay.
The khaki, and we had combat boots, and they were boots they come up about so many inches up here with a strap around it, and of course our rifle, our ammunition. We had our grenades issued to us. We had a fragmentation grenade. We had a phosphate grenade. And then we had, in the wintertime there, I had 2 little blocks of TNT, which is like dynamite, and I carried that strapped to my bayonet, scaffold, and I had a cap and a fuse around my helmet. I never did have to use them, but it was so cold you couldn't dig a foxhole, you had to blow it.
Now, did they give you a knife? Did they give you a knife too, or?
Oh, yeah, well, we had a bayonet. Now, we weren't issued that trench knife, but some way or other I got one. And I liked it because it had a short blade on it. The bayonet was longer. And this trench knife, they called them, they were sharp. I mean, they really, you could do things with them.
You issued a shovel?
Issued a shovel, had a shovel, and it bent over. You could use it as a pick. You could turn it down like that and it'd be a pick. And then get it back up there and there was a shovel. It was about 8 inches across or 7 inches across. And we carried that.
Then you have like your spoons and...
You had your canteen cup, and you had your S gear, and you had your tools to eat with, knife, fork, and spoon. Finally we ended up with just a spoon. And like I told you once, we rub it up and down in the ground to get it clean and wipe it off and put it in your pocket and go. Wonder we all didn't get sick. But I guess that...
Too cold for Germans.
Yeah, it's too cold. The Germans, yeah.
The Germans couldn't live it.
So I guess that's about it on our issued our stuff. Now we had mittens or gloves and mittens, and we had that little cap, stocking cap like thing.
And fireman mitten that you want. With the trigger.
Yeah, I had a trigger finger. I had a mitten that you put your 3 fingers and thumb out like that, but the trigger finger had a finger in it. Oh, I don't know. I look back now. I wore, I don't know where I got the other stuff, but I wore 2 suits of underwear and this other pair. And then later it got so cold that they issued us what they call a windbreaker. And that was just another great big old pair of pants that went over everything. They were kind of gray. And they were supposed to stop the wind from blowing through all your clothes.
Didn't they give you a raincoat too?
Had a raincoat. Yep, had a raincoat. Ammunition belt. Ammunition belt had a first aid packet on it and the canteen. Canteen cup slipped over the canteen.
Do you know what your pack weighed?
No, I don't.
What all was in your first aid kit?
Sulfur drugs. That's about it. Sulfur powder. Somebody got cut or wounded, you pour some sulfur in it, and then holler for the medic. And that's about it, I think, that I remember. At one time they gave us they took our boots away, and they gave us another deal that had like an overshoe on the bottom here up to about so far. Then it was leather on up here, about 10 inches. And they gave you great big thick socks to put in there. So they weren't worth nothing. They leaked. They got your feet wetter than the other. So finally in Belgium, there was one place, they took all those away from us and gave us combat boots, leather boots.
Did you have a watch or anything?
No, I didn't have a watch. No. Some of the other people had watches issued to them, but I never had any. So I just went along with whatever everybody was telling
No
me.
pocket knives?
No, didn't have a pocket knife. No pocket knife.
You always have one now, though.
Yeah, I always have one now. Don't have a pocket knife. That's about it. But you got a lot of stuff, I know. I got you all mixed up, probably. Hard to. Sometimes things come back to you, and you can remember something. And when I'm talking to somebody else, like Ken Alladine over here, well, he can tell me things, and then, hey, that reminds me of this, what happened to me. Somewhat like what he did. We all had about the same thing. But anyway, I don't mind telling some of these things because I think people ought to know it. I think they ought to know why they're free like they are. But I guess some people don't.
I think a lot of our rights and freedoms are going.
Yep.
We better be thankful that we even have a right to our religion. And that is something we have to really take a stand for nowadays. But that is slowly running.
That's right. That is right. I'm afraid I'll do something wrong. Okay. My buddy, Marvin Bodenhausen, and myself, we had our draft papers. We came to St. Joe, tried to get a job, and as soon as they found out we had draft papers, they wouldn't hire us. So we went back to Savannah at our draft board and asked if there was any way we could speed this up a little. And the lady said, you can volunteer for quick induction. So we've signed the paper, and I mean within a week, we were in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, being sworn into the Army. And from there...
What year was that?
That was in August of 1944. I had just been 18, about 4 months. And so from there, they put us on a troop train, and we went to Camp Fannin, Texas. And Camp Fannin, Texas is close to Tyler, Texas, and there's a little town called Kilgore, Texas. And sometimes we would put parades on in Kilgore. But we were there in Camp Fannin for 17 weeks basic training. They taught us how to dig a foxhole. They taught us how to camouflage ourselves so we blended in with the forest. They taught us, of course, how to kill the enemy. And then we were on the rifle range, and they taught us to fire the M1 rifle and the carbine rifle and a .22 rifle and a .30 caliber machine gun and a mortar. I believe that's all the weapons they taught us in infantry training. And we used to go out on what they call rat races at night, and they would wade you through a creek and then they'd make you walk till your shoes were dry. And then after 17 weeks of that, we had 10 days to get from Camp Fannin, Texas to Fort Meade, Maryland. And Fort Meade, Maryland is where we shipped out for overseas. And that was in December of 1944. So anyway, it took us 18 days to go across in this Victory ship. And it was a little ship, but yet they had depth charges, and we'd have to train and get out of our bunks and get ready if we happened to sink. But anyway, so we went on, and we docked at Le Havre, France, 18 days after we left, and we docked at night. Now, I had been sick, I think 17 of those days, and it was my buddy Marvin Bodenhausen that kept me alive. He kept bringing me bread and oranges. I could eat those two things. And he used to say he thought I was going to die, but as soon as we got off of the ship and I touched the ground, gosh, I felt well, and then I was hungry. But anyway, it took us to a big warehouse building where they tanned hides. It was damp inside that building, but that's where they gave us our weapon and our ammunition and some more clothes. And then they also gave us a talk about, at that time, that the Germans were dressing in American uniforms and they could speak American. So to beware of that. So then they took us to what they called a 1,000-inch range, and we zeroed the rifle in there. And I should back up a little bit. I got ahead of myself. While I was in Camp Fannin, Texas, we were out drilling, and I could never understand the corporal. His name was Corporal Powers, and kind of talked through his nose. And anyway, he said, column right, and I went left. And that's when he come over and slapped me on the shoulder, and he said, he rolled up my left pant leg and my left sleeve, and Major was coming down the street in a Jeep, and boy, they come to a vicious halt, and he run over there, and he says, soldier, are they making you march with a rash? And I said, no, sir. I just don't know my left from my right. And he laughed all the way back to the Jeep. So I did some crazy things. And then one other crazy thing I done in Camp Fannin was that everybody in my barracks had left for the weekend. You get a weekend pass. And they left on the weekend. Nobody in that barracks but myself. It was Sunday. There I laid in my shorts reading the funny paper. An officer came into the building. I never done anything. So he walks over to me and he says, "Soldier, what do you do when an officer walks into the building?" And of course, being, I guess, smart aleck, I said, "Well, ordinarily you'd come to attention and salute him. But this is Sunday, and I thought this was my day." And he said, "Soldier, there is no day, your day." So he made me get, there I stood in my shorts, and I stood at attention and I saluted him. And so from then on I learned you didn't. There was no day as yours. So now we're back up at when we got the 1,000-inch range. And zeroed our rifles, and there was a whole group of us. And so they go alphabetically, and so they called off the B's and so on and so forth. And when they got, of course, to Bodenhausen, well, he was loaded on a truck with a gob of other guys. And I can never forget seeing him leave. I thought, I'll never see him again. But anyway, then they finally got to the H's, and so they loaded me on a truck with a gob of other guys, and they took us up, and we traveled, it seemed like quite a ways in the trucks. And I don't know why everybody there picked me, but I had to be the guy that stood up in the truck with my rifle and was watching out for the little German airplanes that would come over. I didn't think I could ever do much with an M1 rifle for an airplane, but I was the guard. So then they let us out, and we walked, and it was so cold. I can remember the wind just cut your face. It was so cold, and windy, of course. And that's where we walked, and we were in Elsenborn, Belgium. And let's see. And then they took me down into a field. And they said, and I had a buddy, I don't remember his name, but we was to dig this foxhole. We had to dig a fighting trench and a sleeping trench. And it was snowing, snow on the ground, and it was still snowing. So you couldn't get too much dirt out until you had to cover it up with snow, because the Germans had that plane going over it, and they could tell how many new recruits were coming in. So anyway, we did that, and then there was a second lieutenant came over and wanted to know what my name was and where I was from, and I told him I was from St. Joseph, Missouri, and what my name was. He said he was from the Boot Heel of Missouri, and we'd get along just fine. And then he asked me to field strip my rifle. When you field strip a rifle, you take it apart in 3 pieces. And I said, I'm not going to field strip my rifle, because I said, they tell me a whole squad of Germans come up about 20 yards away up that, there was a headroom. And about that time, the Germans sent in an 88, which is their artillery. Well, he left like a bullet, and I didn't see him for quite a while. And then I think I was there about 2 or 3 days, sleeping in that thing, and on guard 1 hour. No, we was on guard 2 hours, and slept for 2 hours.
And that's still in the trench in Belgium?
That was still in Belgium. We was in Elsenborn, Belgium. So then we left Belgium and went out on a patrol, as I remember. And when we came back, while we was out though, the sergeant that was in charge says, you can ride home now and tell your parents that you've been in Germany. But we went back to Elsenborn after that, and that's where they walked us through creeks, because we had no mine detector. They couldn't take us through a minefield. And so, anyway, we went back, and I think we stayed one day and 1 night in Elsenborn, and then we left again. And from that time on, we never went back to Belgium. We were always in Germany. And then we, still in the Battle of the Bulge, and we got into this battle, and the tankers had forgot to put out the colors, so we were getting strafed by our own Air Force, and bullets were ricocheting everywhere. And they hit this lieutenant, and I went over to help him, and he said for me to leave him alone, that he was getting out of the war. And then he told another friend, which was a staff sergeant at that time, Warren Schilling. He told him, he and I was together, and he told him that he was going to have to take over the platoon because he was leaving. So we got through that battle, and then we run into some other skirmishes, and I remember, I may get these battles wrong, but anyway, I remember going into one, and I had a first, no, let's see, we got into a counterattack, and a counterattack where as the Germans, we had them pushed out, and then they came back. And so when they came back, I remember seeing this tank come out of the woods, and we had me, and by that time they had made me, I had been in the squad, I had been the first scout, second scout, assistant squad leader, and then I got to be the squad leader. First scout in an infantry squad, he goes out and tries to draw enemy fire if there's any snipers out there. Sometimes the Germans will let the first scout get through, and then they'll get the rest of them. But I was never fired on. So anyway, we was in this counterattack, and the tank come around, and the guy took, the Americans, they had a bazooka, so they shot the track off, and we had 30 caliber machine guns on my left shooting, and rifle fire was everywhere. And so that's when I became the squad leader, was when this squad leader that I had, which was Graham Keith, and he said, Hill, you've got this squad, and I'm going with the chaplain. And so that's when I took it over.
And that was during the counterattack?
Yeah, that's during that counterattack. And then we'd go on. And then there was another deal that I remember we had. We went into a village. Every time you go into a house, into a village, they called it a village, which was a house and a barn, and maybe some outbuildings. I remember running across a plowed field, getting into this, there was kind of like a smokehouse or a little shed, and I got down on my knees because we was getting machine gun fire from the Germans, and I got over there, and another guy, another American, he come running in and telling me to move, and I got from that position over to this other position, and he got a rifle bullet right through his hip. That's how I missed that. And so anyway, we went on, and then there was another place we went into, and they told us that it was all cleared, everything was cleared, no problem. So they told me to take my squad and go out and dig in and protect this railroad track. So I did, and I had a guy in my squad, his name was Jacobs, and he was from Kentucky. And he always carried a skillet with him that he had taken out of some house, and he always had a little roll or a little package of sticks he rolled up, and he carried that, and then when he went to some of these houses, he'd gather up all the eggs he could. So that particular time, he hollered up there and said, "Say, you care if I fry eggs?" And I said, "Fry me one." and the smoke's coming rolling up over that track. Boy, right away we got an 88 in there, which was supposed to be cleared. Well, we took the field glasses and found 2 German soldiers up there in the wooded area with an 88. So I said, put that fire out and let's get the heck out of this place. And I started running into a building, and I got into it was a brick building, stone building. I went in there, and this lieutenant says, Sergeant, this is an officer's building. You have no business coming in here. And I said, sir, you better get yourself and your outfit out of here, because German 88 up there in that wooded area, and when he shoots that 3rd bullet, that 3rd shell, he's going to hit your building. So they all got out. And so then, it seems to me like after that, we went to another place, and Harry Gaither was in this group, and he remembers it well. We went up this steep hill, and brush was everywhere. It was little green stuff, you know. And if you didn't watch it, the guy in front of you would let one of them green sticks come back and slap you in the face. Well, we got up on top. Now, it was cloudy down in there when we started. When we got up on top, the sun was shining. 2 German soldiers were supposed to be up there guarding that place, and they both fell asleep. Well, you can imagine how the guy felt when he wakes up and this American soldier is standing over him with a rifle in his belly. Well, he didn't do anything, that guy didn't, but the other guy got up and started running. And I halted him. Hollered halt several times. And he wouldn't, he just kept running. So one of the guys shot him. I told him later, I didn't give any orders to shoot the guy, I wanted him captured. And so anyway, so then this Jacobs, he always wanted to know, he says, hey Sarge, could I go loot him? I said, well, he's dead. So he did. He went and got his watch, got his ring, and he brought back a compass. I have that compass. And so they used to say when they'd get a new guy in, they'd say, you want to go on Sergeant Hill's squad? Have you heard about his squad? He's got 2 shooting and 10 looting. So anyway, we, one other time, we was guarding in a wooded area, and I had a new guy come to me, and I always laugh about this sometime because after I'd been there up on the front line for about 4 months, well, you felt like you were pretty old. And so whenever they'd bring somebody new, I was always saying, they brought me some 18-year-old kid in here today. And I was only 18. So I told this guy, I said, I'm going to relieve you, and you go eat chow, and they've got a hot oatmeal out there. And I said, now, you walk in the same tracks that I made you through the snow. And when you get over there to a certain area, there's a big log and a dead German, froze stiff as heck, but they've got him wired. So don't go souvenir hunting. He's got a Luger sticking out of his holster. And a doggone guy went over there and reached down to get that Luger, and he got killed. He tripped that wire and blew him up. He was only there one day. And it's sad, like people say, when they come in and just ride it 1 day or 2 days and they're gone. But anyway.
Do you remember his name?
No, I don't know that name. But when I got wounded, it was on February the 4th. And I was in the Ardennes Forest.
And that's a 45, right?
Yeah, 1945. And I didn't get in on the balls too much. It started on the 16th of December, ended on January the 25th. I was there at the first part of January. So let's see where else I could go. Well, I said I was wounded on February the 4th, and I was, and I'll tell this again. But I was standing over by myself, and there was 9 other guys over there, and I didn't know anybody, and they hollered over and wanted to know my name, where I was from, and all that. And I went over there and talked to the guy way on the other side, and then the Germans sent in 2 88s. 88s is their artillery, and I had a tree burst right where I was standing. So by the grace of God, I lived. But there was 2 guys got killed by the concussion, and 6 went to the hospital, and me and one other guy could walk, but our legs burned. We got powder burns, and I think it was about maybe a day or half a day it took us to catch up with the rest of them. And then the day after that, they checked you for frostbite, and that's when this guy found the blood on my leg here, and I told him what happened, and so he put me in for a Purple Heart. Told me I should write my mother because they was going to send her a telegram, and she might think I'm worse off than I was. But she never did get the telegram. So then we were going into another battle, and my first scout, his name was Frank Straub, and we were close buddies. And we got in there, and the captain we was going in, and he says, we're going to surprise. He went around to everybody and said, be quiet. He says, we're going to surprise them. We're going to take them at daybreak. And come back to where I was, and I had a rifle with a grenade launcher on it, so I could fire fragmentation grenades. And on that, you never hold that rifle to your shoulder because it'll break your shoulder, so you put it in the ground and shoot it that way. So he come back to me and says, fire that grenade up over that bank. And then he went around telling everybody to be quiet, we're going to take them at daybreak. And then he gets up at the end of it and cups his hands over his mouth and says, bring the radio up front. And I thought, boy, you're telling the whole German army where we are. But we get into that place, and Frank Straub and I, we were down on our bellies and crawling, and I was ahead of him, and the German machine gun had us pinned down. Boy, we couldn't get any flatter on that ground. And I remember Frank hollered up at me and he says, you got to come back, I'm hit. I can feel the blood going down my back. So I turned around and I crawled back. And when I got there, I said, Frank, they shot your can of eggs. The grease is running down your back. And they had just fired over us so much that the plaster and stuff fell down in his rifle, and he couldn't get the bolt to go forward. So he went through that battle without any weapon. But we finally got it cleaned out and got it so it worked. He tells that story, and his sons have told me that story over the telephone. So, and they've got, so his son says that they got a lot of pictures of me. And so we got through that one, and then let's see. I guess anyway, we at the end of the war.
You better get across the line.
Oh, God, yeah, I got to do
You might
that.
as well tell them how many foxholes
Yeah, that's right. I forgot
you
that.
dug one day.
Yeah, one day the Germans were moving so fast, and that in one day I dug 6 foxholes. And every time you'd get a foxhole dug, they'd come along and say, well, get your men together, get your gear together, we're moving out.
So how big is a foxhole?
Foxhole is, it's about 4 foot long, a couple of feet wide, and you make it, it's just so it's comfortable to come out like that, so it's probably about 4 foot deep. And so then that evening, they told me to take the men. My squad went in. There's a picture of it in that book. But anyway, take your squad into that ravine, and we're going to stay here tonight. So I told the men, you know, I've dug 5 foxholes today, and I'm going to sleep on top of the ground. You do what you want to. And about that time, one of those 88s come in, and I dug that foxhole with my little shovel and my steel helmet. And I went right on down. And then, I forgot, I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyway, here we go. I was over on the Cologne Plains. We were fighting on the Cologne Plains. And there, we captured a soldier. He was waving a white flag and was coming in. And so I told every of them, be cautious of this guy. He can get so close to you and drop that flag and just fire the heck out of him. But he didn't. He'd come up and just hugged one of my men. But he had the SS, which is a very mean Germans. They had come by and put him in the service, but we could tell they were running out of equipment because his rifle had a green stalk. The wood hadn't even been cured out. It was just as green as could be. So he surrendered. He didn't want to have nothing to do with anything. But then that's when they were getting ready to cross the Rhine River. And so General Eisenhower, so I read, says that we could save the Remagen Bridge. It shortened the war 6 months and saved thousands and thousands of lives. So, but he said he couldn't do it with one army. He'd have to have another one. So he got a hold of General Patton. By that time, now at first I was in General Hodges' First Army all through this. But now, when we get ready to cross the Rhine at Remagen, I was in General Patton's Third Army. And so they trucked us a long ways and let us out, and then we walked a long ways. And one of the guys come up to me and said, "What are we doing here?" I said, "Look off to your left. We're going to take that bridge. We're going to cross that bridge." And now that was the first time that I can remember. I've seen a lot of them, but there were dead American soldiers hanging out of trucks and tanks and jeeps. And you literally had to walk over them down that street. They were laying everywhere. And that's when I'd went somewhere and was run out of drinking water. And so I remember I got this guy's canteen and I got all of his ammunition. And so from then on I carried 2 canteens of water. And so we made the approach up to the bridge. It was a railroad bridge with 2 tracks and big holes that the shells had gone through. And so when we got ready to approach it, the MPs were there, military police was there. And they said, "Don't stop for your buddy. If he gets wounded or killed, you keep right on running." And so Frank and I got across with no problem. I don't know how, but we did. So then we went up, after that we went up on top of the hill. There was a big hill there. And by that time it was nighttime. So we was digging in and it was rocky. making a lot of noise, actually, digging in the rocks. And all of a sudden, a German machine gun started firing, and I guess Frank went down first, and I went down on top of him. I fell backwards, and I can see those tracer bullets going right over my head. And you know when you think you're going to die, your whole life flashes before you. And I always thought, I'll never do anything wrong that my mother tells me to do. So, but anyway, we lived through that. And so the next morning we left and we crossed the Weed River. And by this time, I had an assistant squad leader, and his name was Wall. Corporal Wall.
And you're an assistant?
Hmm?
You were an assistant squad leader?
He was my assistant,
Okay.
yeah. You got his picture down there on the piano. He and I together. Or used to have it on the piano.
And what was his name?
Wall. Gaston C. Wall, they told me, just like the side of a building. And so we got pinned down by Hitler Youth. And they had a machine gun up in the church steeple. Or they had a good view of us. And they really got us pinned down good. And the old Wall, he hollered at me, says, Hill, get over here and get this log out of my way. Says, I just keep falling down off, was on a bank. Said, I just keep sliding down, get this log out of my way. And I went over there and looked and I said, Wall, that's no log, that's a dud. It hasn't gone off yet. Said, you better get the heck out of here. Well, we didn't do it, but somebody got those guys up in that church steeple. And then we, I know after that, we crossed the Danube River. And it wasn't blue, by the way. And to get there, we marched 20 miles. I didn't think I could ever make it. And we had a lot of ambulances coming along, and guys that couldn't make it, they picked them up. And I remember we finally got there to the river, and we were all so thirsty that we didn't even take time to fill the canteens. You just went down there and drank out of the river.
About what time was this?
I forget what.
It's
So that was probably April. It was April. I could look it up. I think it was April. And anyway, they told us when we got there at night, and the officer said that, told us to take our men into the wooded area and just sleep on top of the ground, and you're going to get a hot meal before we cross the river. And just got them bedded down. I bet we hadn't been bedded down over an hour, and they come back and said, we're crossing the river now. And so we got into boats, flat bottom boats. And this never happened to me, but the boat I was in anyway, we got across the river, fairly good shape, except that when we got out in the middle of the current, we like to never got out of that current to get over to the other side. We drifted way, way down. K Company, they got stuck on an island, and they got the dickens shot out of them. But some of the guys that I've talked to said that when they got in those boats, they'd never been in a boat before, and they didn't know how to row it. One guy'd go this way, and one guy, and they went round and round and round. So they like never made it across there. So after that, I don't know, we marched and marched. And it rained that night, I remember. Slept in a muddy foxhole. And then we were somewhere else at one time. And we were in a wooded area. And we could look across the valley, ravine, like, and we'd see the Germans walking around over there. And every once in a while we'd take a pot shot at them, and they'd pot shot at us. And that we got relieved. Oh, we was out there, and I can't hardly believe this, but this really happened. We was out in a dug in, always dug in, and here come this German up through there. And when he got up there, he said he wanted to see our first Sergeant Baker, and I want to see Sergeant Hill. And I thought, if I had been over for about 4.5 months, I don't know how they got my name, but their intelligence was pretty good. But what he wanted to tell us was that you guys are going to get relieved. I think he said, you guys are going to get relieved in 2 days, and you're going to get relieved by the 69th Infantry coming out of England. And by golly, he was right. In 2 days, we got relieved by the 69th Infantry. And they came in at night, and they come to my foxhole, these guys, and I told him, I said, now, don't start any fires, don't light a cigarette, because the Germans are right over there. They can see everything you do. And the guy got down in there and he says, hey, this foxhole is wet. I said, yeah, that foxhole is wet. It's been wet for a week. And you know, we got out of the woods by holding on to a telephone wire. It was so dark. And we heard later that they started a fire. They got the Dickens shot out of it. I just can't understand that. But anyway, I guess we're getting up into the month of May, and we were on our way to Berchtesgaden, Hitler's hideout. And it was raining like today. We was walking in the mud up through there. One of the guys come up to me and said, there's a Jeep coming back. There's a Jeep coming up here. Got 2 stars on it. What does it mean? I said, well, it means there's a general back there. I said, something must be going to happen. I've never seen a general up here. And that night, now this was probably in the afternoon, about 3:30, but by 4:30 we had orders to cease fire. And that was on May the 8th. That was President Truman's birthday. And on May the 9th was my birthday, and I had just turned 19 years old. By that time, I had won 10 medals, counting the 2 I won in training. I thought that was pretty good for being 19.
You used your story about when you went to rations for sleep.
Yes.
You used when you went to sleep and halted. Somebody didn't halt.
I remember a story about socks. Socks.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, well, and there's a story about you had 2 pairs of socks.
Oh, yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
she's referring to.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're interjecting things I haven't heard all this time. That the others I've been brainwashed.
Well, anyway, yeah, we were issued 2 pairs of socks. And we wore 1 pair, and we kept the other pair around our waist, next to our skin, because that was the only way we could keep it dry. And then when they'd get wet or something, if we could get somewhere, we'd kind of rinse them out. And then it was terrible to put those cold socks up against your stomach. But that's how we did that. And then, yeah, I forgot to tell you that.
Didn't you like take some German guy's sock?
Yes,
That's what I remember.
Okay, we captured a German. We captured a German trailer-like thing, and it had socks in it. And everybody grabbed the socks. And some of us ended up with athletes with those old German socks. They were big, heavy gray ones, but at least they were dry. Mm-hmm. And so then that other one she wanted me to tell you about. Uh, we took the infantry took a area, a forest area, that the tanks couldn't come in and help us. And so the kitchen truck, every time they'd hear any fire at all, they'd turn around and run the other way. So we didn't have any food. So they had asked for volunteers to go back to where the kitchen truck was and pick up some K rations. So I volunteered to go, and I had 3 guys with me.
What exactly is a K ration?
Huh?
What exactly is a K ration?
K ration is, we had a breakfast ration and a dinner ration and a supper ration.
Mm-hmm.
A breakfast ration consisted of a little can about that thick, about so big around, and it had eggs in it. And then you had a heat capsule. And you could light that little heat capsule and put off a blue flame. But you had to remember to poke a hole in that can or it'd blow up. And then you got crackers, and you had coffee, and you had bouillon with that. And the noon ration, or the dinner ration, it had crackers and cheese, and it came in a can. And crackers and cheese and what else? Something else. And then the supper ration, it would have some canned food, and then you'd have, what else? Anyway, probably some kind of potted meat or something in a can. And that is when you got your toilet paper and a package of 4 cigarettes.
Didn't you get chocolate ones too?
Chocolate bar was in the supper ration. You're right. Chocolate bar was in the supper ration.
I remember the chocolate.
Called it a D bar. They called it a D bar.
Now, is K ration, is that kind of like what MREs are today?
Yeah,
or?
I think so.
Okay.
K ration come in a little box about that wide, maybe that long.
Okay.
And they were different colors.
Now, did you carry any of those around with you, or?
Yeah, I'm sure we did.
But not too often?
And we had not too often. We had C rations too, and they came in a can, like your Van Camp's pork and beans and stuff, you know. And they were beans. They had beans and meat and all that stuff in. They weren't too bad. You ate half the time you ate that stuff cold.
Yeah.
And let's see. Anyway, my stories. I remember going. Here's one. One time we, when we got our infantry would rest, you'd go back with the artillery. And so we went back to the artillery and rested, and there was a place there that they had a lady there had a whole bunch of chickens. So we took the chickens. We was getting hungry. So we took the chickens, couldn't get any water to, pull the feathers off, hot water. So we skinned them and fried the meat in our mess gear, which we weren't supposed to do, but we did. So we had fried chicken. And then they put us out on guard. And I remember me and this other guy, and there was a kind of like a terrace. And it was just right to sit down and lean back against this terrace. And so we stayed there, took turns about on 2 hours and off 2 hours. And so when daylight got there, he says, how about let's heat us up a little coffee? So we started a little fire. And lo and behold, we found out that all night long we were there. Just on the back side of us was 2 Germans doing the same thing. Well, then when they heard us talking, well, they got up and started running. And then a tank came down through there, and the guy said, which way did those Germans go? I said, I think they went off to the right somewhere. And I don't know whether they ever got them or not. Anyway, they headed that way. So okay. Yeah, when I first went into Belgium, and I met a guy by the name of Carter, and he said, "You're new here, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I sure am." "How do you know?" He says, "Because you're clean." And the reason that he meant was that and I did finally look like him, but we took sea ration cans, which was like that Van Camp can, and they'd fill it with dirt, and they'd pour gasoline in it and light it, and it would put off some heat, but it also put off soot. The soot would get in your whiskers. And some guys tell me when they were captured, the Germans thought they were capturing colored people. They'd go up and, Herb told me, yeah, and he said they'd take their finger and go down across your face and then find out, yeah, you are white. So, yeah, that's something there.
I had no boots.
What?
I had no overshoes.
Oh, no, they took their overshoes when they captured them.
Well, you didn't have any overshoes.
No, I didn't have any overshoes, no.
Coldest winter, and you guys were not prepared. You had no overshoes.
I had no overshoes. That's
Not
right.
just you, but your whole group didn't.
Nobody had overshoes. And one time, Patton said that we had those little stocking cap like things that had a bill on them. But he said he didn't want anybody wearing those because you didn't look like a soldier. But I kept mine. But it didn't come down low enough to cover all of your ear, but it helped a little. So, let's see. Well, after we had occupation duty a little bit after I was still in the 99th Infantry, and we had some occupation duty, and that's when they asked for volunteers to go to Bamberg, Germany, and I knew Marvin Bodenhaus was stationed there.
Where was this again?
Bamberg, Germany. So I volunteered to go up there, and so we got together. We got to visit quite a bit, see each other every day as long as I was there, and they'd put us in some SS barracks. Reminded me of high schools over here because they had marble floors and walnut wood, all really nice. And then they took us, we went back, I guess, to this little Newtstadt on the main river. And then, I don't know just how it all happened, but after that, then I was on my way to Japan. Now Marvin, he stayed in the Big Red One, but all that time. But I was on my way to Japan, so they put us on a ship. And
Did you get in there that you on the train? Wasn't you guarding the train?
oh, yeah, after, well, I was still in the 99th Infantry. I wore an MP band, by the way, military police, and we was guarding PX trains. And the Germans had a way of always parking that train on a curve, on a hill. And you had to get off and patrol the train because they were wanting cigarettes and candy. And a lot of it was on those trains. And I remember we come through a little town by the name of Gießen. I was stationed in Kassel, Germany then. That was occupation duty. I was going to get to Kassel pretty soon, but because I went to England and stationed at Winchester, England, and then that's when President Truman dropped those bombs in Japan. And then they sent us back to Germany, and that's where I was in Kassel, Germany. And then that's what I did.
Where were you in England again?
I was in England,
What city?
I don't know, in Winchester, England was the name of the town. I think I was there for 2 months before they finally decided to send us back to Germany.
Well, it was just you and others talking about finding the prisoners in the trains, and they just had abandoned them and left the prisoners all.
No, we did that.
That's what I.
We did that while I was still in the 99th Infantry. I should have my book out because that gives you the dates. So can you shut that off now? Cool. And they died of starvation, you know, and all that stuff. And here was a place, Landshut, we went into. And Landshut, we crossed the river, or a creek rather, and there we waded in water clear up to our waist. You had to hold your rifle up over your head. And we got in there and we captured that. This is called about Baker Company. C Company was in there too. And somewhere, this is one of our guys here, 1st Battalion. And I remember this guy had a hole shot in his Jeep. This is the place that I told you about a while ago where I volunteered to go back and get some K rations.
Mm-hmm.
And you see all the trees, and so we didn't get any help from the tankers or anybody, so the infantry took that area.
Speaking of tanks, Mom said that there was a story where you were supposed to get in the first tank, and then you went back to the second one.
I was. There was a place, that's right. And, infantry rode tanks, and at the end, they called us mechanized infantry. And so I was getting all the guys on that one tank, and then they said, I got on, and they said, you got to get off of here, there isn't room for any more. Said, you go back there and get on that half track. So I went back and got on the half track, and just as I got on the half track, a German bazooka knocked that tread off of that tank I'd have been on. Had several wounded. I can't remember whether anybody got killed, but there's a lot of guys wounded on that tank. Well, that's another story. Yeah.
I think that's probably what they were.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, one time we was riding tanks again, and out of nowhere came a German squad, which is 11 guys. And boy, they started firing, and everybody jumped off of that tank. The tank had chicken wire on it that for camouflage purposes. And I got my gas mask caught in that wire, and every time that turret went around, I had to go with it. And they kept hollering, jump, jump. I thought, what do you think I'm trying to do? But anyway, I finally got my trench knife out I had and cut that strap off of my gas mask. Of course, I never carried a gas mask from then on, but I did finally jump after that. So at this place, we were digging down and hitting water. It hit a spring. Shoot.
So when did you find the abandoned train cars?
Abandoned what?
The train
train?
cars with the prisoners?
The abandoned train? Let me see. Over here.
Is that what you were in Kassel?
No, I'm still in the 99th. his granny. I just had that picture. There he is. Let's see. 1st Battalion, Welser, Charlie Company, which is our company, found this trainload of American POWs. Nearly 300 Americans who were ill from malnutrition, bearing large frostbite sores from the filth and lice. The prisoners had been deserted by the retreating Germans on a railroad siding after a desperate attempt to remove them from their confinement in Lemberg. As the liberated American column swept eastward. County Mill section. Others waited in the Army care until transportation was available. The 1st Battalion chaplain gave thanks to God for their deliverance from the Nazis.
So did you see any of the concentration camps?
Not at that time. Your grandma and I seen.
Yeah, but no, you
No,
didn't.
that's what I said. No,
Not during the war?
Not during the war. I didn't see them.
No, and Mr. Ketchum, which is
Yeah,
the one
he did.
they liberated.
Yeah. A friend of mine by the name of, his name is Quentin Ketchum. Always known him as Bud. But
Where did he go?
he went into Dachau. Yeah. Because when he heard I was there, he wished he had been with me. But he did that. He said they sneaked in at night and crawled under the fence, cut the fence so they could get in. And just before daybreak, they crawled up those towers and killed the guards. And then I just saw on the History Channel the other night about all. But they were talking about Auschwitz and not Dachau. Anyway, okay. Let's see, then, on that, when they asked for volunteers to go get the K rations, and coming back, we got pinned down by a German machine gun, and they apparently either figured we was dead or something, but they left. And
How many of you left and how many of you came?
4 of us left. 4 of us went to get the rations. 2 of us came back.
What happened when you were gone?
And then the password changes at midnight. And so when I came back, I gave the wrong password. And that's when the Germans were dressed in American uniforms. And so this guy that was with me, he said, you better think of something. They think we're Germans dressed in American uniforms. And I didn't know anything about sports. They taught us in training. I always know about sports because the Germans don't know that. Well, I didn't know anything about sports. So I just started swearing, and I said every swear word I'd ever heard. And I never will forget seeing these 2 guys, and one of them turned to the other one and said, they've got to be Americans. There isn't a German that can swear like that. And let us ride on in. I tell so many stories, and then sometimes I forget.
So you had mentioned them trying to court-martial you?
Oh, yes. I fell asleep on guard duty when I first got over there. It was raining, I remember, and the old rain dropping down on my SEAL helmet just put me to sleep. And this Graham Keith, which was the squad leader, he said, I could court-martial you for going to sleep on guard duty. And I said, why don't you? Then I can get out of here.
This was the story I was thinking of.
Oh, what's the one you're...
The order that you gave to shoot.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. That's right. I'll tell her that. So this lieutenant, this second lieutenant, his name was Bixler, and he's the one I told you about wanting me to field strip the rifle in Belgium. And then he's the one I told you about that said, leave him alone. He was getting out of the war. Well, after we was back in, I think this was Newtstock that we were at, and I had just posted the guards, and I went back to, since I was a sergeant of the guard, I went back to the guardhouse, and I was making up a bunk. We lived in an old German schoolhouse, and I heard somebody open up a door and clear their throat, and I looked around over my shoulder. I was making up the bed, and I turned around and looked over my shoulder, and I said, "Oh, Lieutenant Bixler, come on in. It's safe now. You know the war's over." And he cleared his throat a few times and said, "Haven't you forgot something?" And I said, "Oh, yes, sir, I sure have." And I came to attention, and I saluted him. Sergeant Hill reported and ordered, sir. And he said, "And by the way, when did they make you a sergeant?" I said, "About 30 minutes after you left, sir." And that wasn't the thing to say. So then when we went to Bamberg, I'll be darned if he didn't go to Bamberg. And he looked me up right away and he says, "What is your job?" I said, "I'm sergeant of the guard, sir." He said, "I'm going to be inspecting your guards tonight. And if I catch one of them sitting down, I'm going to court-martial you." I said, "Well, sir, I'll guarantee you that you won't catch them sitting down." So I had two guys in my squad at that time, and one of them, believe it or not, two of them, was a Corporal Hill and a Sergeant Hill. No relation to me. They came in from the 4th Infantry Division on their way home. And so I told them the situation, and I said, and we posted 2 guards in every post at the airport. And I told these 2 guys, I said, "Now, I'll post you on the gate. When Lieutenant Bixler comes through, he'll be coming through with riding in his Jeep, driver and his driver, and I want you to halt him. If he doesn't halt, I want you to fire all 16 rounds right over the top of that Jeep." And so when I brought him in, I asked what happened, and they told me he didn't halt. They did fire, like I said, and he made that about face, you might say, on that Jeep, and I never seen the guy from then on, and I never heard about him, Shannon, until maybe a year or 2 years ago, when Joe Forster called me from Athens, Georgia, and asked me if I knew anybody by that name. And that's when he told me that he was ill and was in the hospital. And then later on, he called me and said he passed away. But I don't know why, but he was, well, I guess I know why. I was probably smart aleck and all that stuff. Yeah. That's why he was after me all that time.
I've always been shocked that they ever let him live.
But probably I
Probably
lost.
some of his own didn't take him because that happened.
But anyway, when I was in England, the rumor was, after we'd been there for about 2 months, the rumor was that we were going to go back to the United States and become what they call cadre at these camps. And a cadre is a guy that teaches the young recruits. And so I thought, well, gosh, if I'm going back to the United States, I sure want my parents to know that I'm a sergeant. So I went to town and I bought me some sergeant stripes. I never did wear them before. And so I sewed them on my uniform, fancied them up with little white X's all around them, you know. By golly, it wasn't long till the first sergeant called all the troops out in formation. He just said, fall out in formation. And we did, and then he spotted them sergeant stripes on me, and he said, Sergeant, I'll take you, not take you. You 3 men are going to get 150 men back to Germany. You're going back to Germany for occupation duty. So they went back across the channel, got loaded into trucks, and ended up in the 3rd Infantry I was in E Company, 2nd Battalion, I think it was. So I stayed there for a year with the 3rd. And then they told me I finally had 42 points. I didn't think I'd ever come home on the point system, but they did. They got a hold of me one day and said, you're coming up to go home. He says, we put you in for a staff sergeant. If you stay another 6 months, you're going to become a staff sergeant. Or you can fill out a form and maybe become a warrant officer. Now, what do you want to do? And I said, I'm going to go home. So I come home.
So what is the point system?
The point system, so many months in the Army gave you so many points.
Mm-hmm.
And the Purple Heart gave me 5 points. Combat Infantry Badge gave me 10 points. And I don't know exactly how, but I ended up with 45. But these other guys that I knew that came in, like I was telling you, they had as many as 90-some points, and some of them had 108. They'd been in from the very first. And so they got, of course, those guys got to go home first.
So in the battles that you were actually in, is on your record.
Oh, on my record, I was in the Battle of the Bulge, Central Europe, crossing of the Rhine, and were noted for the Ruhr Pocket. The Ruhr Pocket, R-U-H-A, I think it is. And in the Ruhr Pocket, we didn't get a battle star for that because the Germans were surrendering. And I remember reading somewhere that they thought there would be 17,000 Germans surrendering. It ended up 135,000 surrendered. There were so many Germans coming in, walking across that bridge, and they threw all their weapons over in the river. But the water was clear, and you couldn't believe the next morning of all the GIs was out there getting souvenirs, wading in that water and diving down and getting that stuff. And there, the Germans, when they give up, when they surrender, the officer surrenders for the enlisted men. Mm-hmm. And they want to surrender to the same rank that they are to the Americans. So this particular time, we didn't have very many officers there because there were so many Germans coming in. We didn't think there'd be that many, so I suppose they thought they had enough. But anyway, I remember this lieutenant come to me and he wanted to surrender, him and his men, but he said, Sergeant, I want to surrender to another second lieutenant. I said, shook my head, and I said, there isn't any lieutenants here. There are hardly any officers here. So if you want to surrender, I'm the guy you're going to have to surrender to. So he did. And then I finally did look up an officer somewhere. And I said, I don't know what to do with all these men. And I think this was a captain, maybe. He said, we'll take them up there to that schoolhouse, and you tell them that the officers can sleep inside the building, but the enlisted men will have to sleep out into the playground. And I remember it had a fence around it and the blacktop playground. And so I told him that, explained it to him, best I knew how. And later, one of the officers came back out and came over to me and he said, do you realize that there's no beds in that room, in that schoolhouse? I said, well, no, I didn't know. There's no beds in there. I said, if you don't want to sleep in there where it's dry, why don't you sleep out here with your men? And he could speak good English. And so I asked him, where did you learn to speak English like that? He said, well, you know, I was going to school in St. Louis, Missouri. I came home to visit my parents, and the SS put me in the terminal. So, it's so many things. I captured some Germans. The first word I remember in German was, I captured a German and he kept saying, alles kaputt, Deutschland's kaputt, Hitler's kaputt. I finally learned what kaput meant, was that everything was gone, no good. And so I learned that. And then I learned a little bit of German that I could visit with people once in a while. After the war was over, you know. I don't know, I probably forgot a lot of things that I wanted to say.
So, what souvenirs did you come home with?
Oh, okay.
Like your looting and stuff.
I came home with,
Got rid of all
yeah, I tell you, what I had over there, when they gave up in the Ruhr pocket, I had cabbaged onto a Belgian .38 pistol, which looked just like our American .45. And I had two .32 German, .32 Walther pistols. And I had one pistol that was 25 caliber. It was really tiny. And then I wish I'd have kept this one thing. I had a pencil. It looked like a pencil, and you couldn't write with it. But at the other end of it was a little trigger-like thing, and you could. It was it was a weapon. You could kill a guy like I'm sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I got rid of that thing too, I guess, because.
Yes. She asked me when she came home.
So, okay. So, I came home with one camera, one pair of binoculars, one pistol. That's it. You had those three things.
You had a pocket watch.
Oh, I brought home the pocket watch. I didn't have to have a permit for that, but I brought home that pocket watch you got. And so anyway, I had all these things. I had a permit for them. Mm-hmm. So when we get into New York and they get us into a barracks, an officer came in. He called everybody to attention. Said, lay everything out on the bunks that you brought. All your souvenirs, lay them out on the bunks with the permits. There'll be an officer in later to check everything. And later, officer came in, everybody come to attention again by their bunk, and that officer walked right straight through that building, got out the other door, opened up the door, and turned around and said, okay, boys, put them back in the bags. I could have brought everything I owned. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. I gave them away to other guys.
Oh, do you still have the binoculars and cameras?
Yeah, the binoculars and the camera's still here. And for a package of cigarettes, I gave a shoe man a package of cigarettes, and he made me a leather case for the camera. Still got the case, all that stuff, around here somewhere. Got the binoculars, and I got the...
You still have the pistol, or...?
Mike, your Uncle Mike's got the pistol. Your dad's got the watch. And I got the compass here somewhere. And then I also had somewhere around here, I had a little German stove that they used in the field, and they even had the heat pellets that they used to heat their coffee and hot drink. And that's about it, I think. I brought a flashlight back, but I don't think it's around here anywhere now. They had a flashlight, a little box-like thing, and you could flip up a red light, a green light, a yellow light. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly. I guess it was to to signal people.
Mhm.
But I got that. But now Marvin, he brought back a lot of stuff, and he brought back a German flag with the swastika on it. And he had a list, so he told me. I remember seeing the flag, and he had a list of the men that had died, and I think it was his middle son that he said come over to the house. He didn't say, he said one of the boys.
Mhm.
He said there's evil in this house. So he shamed his dad so much that he took the thing out and popped it on. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, he took that flag out and buried it.
Mhm.
I got this off of the German. That's their eating tool.
2-in-1.
2-in-1. Like that. And this is their little stove.
Now, was that the spoon that you told me you dip in the dirt?
No,
To clean it
it was
off?
my own that I did. The American.
Yeah, turn those in.
Yeah, I had to turn
your
them back.
own in.
Here's the little stove. You do it like that. Pick it up like that. And this is the little
Be
bucket.
careful, it'll fall apart.
Yeah, I know it.
Pretty old. Better
Yeah.
leave it down in there.
I will. Well, anyway, that's the little
Leave it
pellets.
alone.
Mhm.
Here's the picture, see? Here's your fire. Set your cup up here.
Mhm.
That's been around a few years.
Yeah.
There, so
Yeah, I have. That's it.
Wow.
Now, I don't know where the compass is. I've seen it here not too long ago.
at this point, I don't either.
No. But I
I did know where those were.
I didn't have to have a permit for all that.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, but Uncle Mike.
Yeah, he has the pistol.
So besides having us kids know how close that we were to losing the war, what do you want us to remember most?
What I want you to remember about me?
No,
No.
just like you and the war in general.
And that's what we became.
Oh.
Yeah. Say, besides knowing how close,
Because of the Battle of the Bulge.
what other big thing
It
do you want
was
us
the
to
Battle
remember?
of the Bulge that we about lost. It was in that battle that we came pretty close to losing. And Hitler said he was going to walk right on through the Ardennes because for 3 reasons. That they're young, they're Americans, and they don't know how to fight. But we proved. And by the time I got there as a replacement, by that time, practically all of the 99th Infantry was 90%, they say. 90% of the 99th Infantry was replaced by replacements like myself,
Mhm.
because the others had either been wounded or shot or,
Mhm.
Or prisoners.
killed or in prison. A lot of them were prisoners. A lot of them got captured on the first day, the 16th of December. They got captured.
Just think what the freedom means, Shannon.
Yeah.
If you have the freedom to come and do and what you want. And appreciate it. Because of what all those 18 and 19 and the 20-year-olds
Yeah.
started in the first place.
So were there quite a few of you that started out together, but you made it back together?
Well, not really that I know of. The only ones, like Marvin told me, it was a good thing, he said, that we were separated for the simple reason that he said he was with a couple of guys that were like he and I, had gone through school together and buddied around. And one of them got killed, one of them got a very bad shot, and the other guy went out to help him, and he got killed. So that's what Marvin said one time. It's a good thing that split us up, because we'd have done the same thing if somebody didn't come.
So did Frank make it out with you?
Who?
Frank
Frank.
Strong.
Yeah, did he make it out with you?
Yeah, Frank made it. Yeah, he made it, and he was sent to England, he told me. fell in love with an English girl and married her and brought her back.
Frank Straub made it back. Bert Berta, who you fought beside Bert.
Yeah, Bert Berta.
Warren Schilling, who you fought with.
Warren Schilling and I.
And Harry Gaither, who you definitely fought with, because you're the only one that Harry ever had the same stories.
That's right.
And finally decided that you were the only one that, hey, he finally fought the same war that everybody else did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because Harry went to these reunions long before you
long
did.
before I did.
And never felt like he had any part in it because it was so different.
Yeah, that's what he said. So we've been, now since we've been going to the meetings, Harry and I have been really close.
There were 12 of them together this year.
Yeah.
But I know Bert remembered, Henry was a runner, Henry, and he remembers all of you guys.
He remembers me, yeah. That's right.
And Joe Forster, that had gotten Grapple started into this and then contacted him for years, he had the same squad. He was wounded and Grapple took it.
Yeah.
So he always said that what he started, your Grapple finished.
Yeah.
So,
He'd tell everybody that whenever we'd go to the meetings. He'd say, now I want you to meet Bill and Marilyn Hill. Said, now Bill took over my squad. He finished what I started.
So what day did you officially, get back to stay in the United States?
I was discharged at Jefferson Barracks on May the 16th, 1946. Jefferson Barracks is in St. Louis, Missouri.
Where did you land when you first hit the United States?
Landed in New York. And I was sitting on my duffel bag on that ship. And a guy walked up to me, and I guess I must have looked pretty sad or something. And he looked at me and he says, well, Sergeant, where are you from? I said, St. Joseph, Missouri. He said, does St. Joseph, Missouri have a newspaper? I said, yes, sir. They got the Gazette and the News Press. And that's about all I remember he saying. He walked off. Got into New York, called my mother, and I thought, these operators won't even know where Avenue City, Missouri is. But they did. They got a hold of my mom. And I said, Mom, I'm home. I'm in New York. And she said, I know you are. I said, how do you know I'm in New York? She said, well, it just came out in the paper. The Sergeant William Hill has just arrived in New York. And we got that part in the scrapbook.
Mm-hmm. So did you get back before Bob did, or was he
No, he
home?
came back before I did. Yeah, he was back probably a year or so before I came. And he went in the Army in 1942.
And how old was he?
Shows you there. Yeah, and then we were put on a train at St. Louis and rode into Kansas City.
Then how did you get home?
And then Kansas City, we rode the bus. We could have rode on into St. Joe on the train, but we had a 4-hour layover in Kansas City. And me and this other guy was anxious to get home. He lived at Union Star, I think. And so I just said, you know, if we'd catch a taxi and get up to the bus station, we could probably be in St. Joe in about an hour. So that's what we done. We went up there and caught the bus, got us a bus ticket, rode home.
You got to St. Joe. Did you have to call your folks to come get you? Do you remember how you got home?
Yeah, they came and got me. And I thought, man, I probably called them from Kansas City to tell them I was taking the bus, I think.
So did you write home every once in a while? Or?
Oh yeah, I wrote home a lot. Uncle Mike's got the letters.
So
You'll
he
have,
gets through with them, you guys.
yeah, and you guys can read them. wrote home a lot. As much as
Marvin
I
wrote
could.
to your great grandmother Grandpa also. But we gave Marvin back the letters one year. We gave his, and we gave Franklin Lattimore wrote, and I think we gave Franklin.
I gave Franklin's back. We gave Marvin's
So
back.
did you ever get letters back, or was it kind of hard to trace where you
Oh yeah,
were?
I got mail, but of course we could never keep them, you know. And anytime we wrote, we was never allowed to say where we were. Every letter, when you get to read them, they'll say somewhere in Germany. And because if you, well, they'd cut the letters all to pieces if you said too much. And some,
At every letter they wrote.
In case they were
Exactly.
intercepted.
yeah, and some of the guys, I guess when their parents got some of the letters, it was all cut to pieces. They said so many things that
They weren't supposed to.
it wasn't supposed to say. So I wrote a letter when we was on ship going over. They said, now you can all write a letter home, but you can't tell where you are. I thought, hey, I'm going to tell my mother right where I am. So I wrote this letter, and down in there somewhere I says, have you ever gone out to sea, if my dog has been fed? He should be fed every day. And I thought sure she'd catch on to it, because I didn't have a dog. And when I come home, she said, was you sending me a message in that letter? I was telling you I was out at sea when I wrote the letter. Now I didn't spell S-E-A, I said S-E-E. And I thought sure she would catch that.
Did you ever write Bob or?
Yes, Bob and I wrote to each other, and one time I remember he wrote me a letter, and he said, you're the real soldier because you carry a rifle. All I do is move in my radio equipment after the island is safely taken. He was in the Signal Corps, and he knew the Morse code and all that stuff. But it takes everybody in a war. They all had their job. And Marvin told me one time, and I don't know whether he remembers it by now, but he told me that when from the area of Crosby, that he and I were the only two that had hand-to-hand combat and came back to tell about it. And I told my brother that once. And he said, I can't believe that. And I said, well, what we mean is like you. You were in the Signal Corps. You never moved into an island until it was safely taken. Most everybody else was in the Air Force, or they were in the Navy, or the Marine Corps. But Marvin and I carried a rifle, and we carried a bayonet, and all that kind of stuff. So he did understand after I said that. But there is so many people that were in the Air Force back then.
Did you ever think about going into some other military branch besides just regular Army?
No. I thought about one time, after I got out, I thought about going back in at one time. And I was in the reserve. I was in the reserve for 9 years. And I used to go to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. They call it Fort McCoy now. I used to go up there, and believe it or not, when I was in the Reserve Corps, I was a tank commander. I was a sergeant first class. That means 3 stripes and 2 rockets.
Tell them why you got out. Grandpa's temper got to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just...
You should have stayed in the reserve and retired then.
I should have. That's right.
Didn't I tell you why?
Huh? Well, I just...
It won't make me think any less of you.
this captain we had, one of the things was they issued combat boots. And I say, why did I get out?
Because they did away with your unit and you were just stubborn enough you were going to go to another.
That's right, they did. They did away with that. Yeah, they did away with.
And that quick hill temper kicked in. And Grandpa said, I am not going to do that. And he did.
But I should have.
Yeah.
They were gonna, I think I'd have been over at Rosecrans Field. I believe that's where they were gonna. On your back. And it took us a while to get the bolt, all that dust out of the bolt, but he went through that episode with no rifle whatsoever, but it stuck by me because mine still works. And I've talked to this guy in 1984, and he lives in Connecticut, and I think he was at the last meeting. However, I would have loved to have been there to talk this and told this story again about how the eggs run down his back, and I imagine it felt like blood. But that's okay.